Cowboy, every time I bend over, your eyes are under my skirt. Don't you dare deny it. Leela stepped out of the dusty pickup truck and blinked against the bright afternoon sun. The ranch spread out before her like a painting. Endless fields of golden grass, wooden fences stretching toward the horizon, and a large weathered barn that seemed to hold 100 stories within its walls. She had never been here before. The city had always been her world. Traffic, noise, and tall buildings. This open, quiet space felt almost unreal. Her heart raced with excitement and nerves. She adjusted the strap of her backpack and looked around. Her uncle, a tall man with sun-worn skin and a calm voice, waved from the porch of the main house. "Lila, welcome. You're finally here." Lila waved back, trying to hide how small and out of place she felt. "Hi, Uncle Dan," she said, forcing a smile. The idea of spending the summer on a ranch had sounded adventurous when she agreed to it, but now that she was here, reality was more intimidating than she expected. She had never milked a cow, never ridden a horse, never even fed chickens. How could she manage all that? "Come on inside, we'll get you settled," her uncle said, and led her up the porch steps. The house smelled faintly of wood polish and fresh bread. Lila's room was simple, with a small bed, a dresser, and a window that looked out over the fields. She set down her bag and took a deep breath. That was when she heard the sound of hooves hitting the ground, sharp and rhythmic. She peeked out the window and saw a man guiding a group of horses. He was tall, with broad shoulders, wearing a faded hat that shaded his eyes, and boots that had clearly seen years of work. His movements were confident, precise, every step controlled. Even from a distance, Lila could feel a sort of quiet authority in him. Her uncle noticed her staring. "That's Jake. One of the best cowboys we have. You'll see him around a lot. Don't let his quiet nature fool you. He's good at everything here." Lila nodded, feeling both intrigued and intimidated. She had heard stories about the rugged cowboys of the West, but seeing one up close was different. There was a certain energy about him that made her heart skip a beat, though she tried to ignore it. The next morning, Lila was introduced to the daily routine of ranch life. Feeding the animals, cleaning the stables, and helping with small chores. It was harder than she expected. By noon, her arms ached, her back hurt, and she was covered in dust. But she tried to push through, wanting to prove to herself that she could handle it. Jake was there most of the time, working quietly, observing, occasionally offering a word of advice. Lila noticed that whenever she bent down to pick something up or tend to a task, she felt his gaze on her. She tried to shake it off, convincing herself that he was just watching to make sure she didn't hurt herself, but the feeling of being watched made her self-conscious. During lunch, she sat under a tree trying to ignore him. When she finally spoke without thinking, "Every time I bend over, your eyes are under my skirt. Don't you dare deny it." Her voice was sharper than she intended, and she felt her face burn. Jake froze for a moment, clearly surprised. Then, instead of reacting with anger or embarrassment, he chuckled lightly. "I was just watching to make sure you didn't hurt yourself," he said, his tone calm, almost teasing. Lila didn't know whether to believe him or not. The rest of the day was a blur of chores and awkward glances. Leela tried to focus on her tasks, but every time she bent down, she could feel his eyes again. She was frustrated with herself for letting it bother her so much. Maybe she was overreacting. Maybe Jake really was just being careful. But it didn't stop the tight knot of tension in her stomach. As the days passed, Lila began to notice more about ranch life. Horses were not just animals. They had personalities, moods, and quirks. Some were stubborn, some were gentle, and some demanded respect in a way that made her feel small but exhilarated. Feeding them became less of a chore and more of a challenge she wanted to master. Jake continued to be near, offering guidance in subtle ways. He never pushed, never hovered too close, but he was always there when she needed help. Sometimes she caught him smiling when she accomplished a task, and it made her cheeks warm. Other times his intense eyes seemed to see straight through her, and she wanted to disappear into the fields just to avoid them. One afternoon, Lila had to clean the stables while a few horses were being fed. She bent over to pick up a bucket, and before she could react, she felt that familiar sensation of being watched. Her frustration boiled over. "I mean it, Jake! Stop staring! I'm not a child!" Jake paused, leaning against the fence, and raised his hands in surrender. "I'm not staring to make you uncomfortable," he said quietly. "I just, notice things. It's my job to watch the animals and the people around them. If you're safe, I'm safe. I didn't mean to make you feel watched." Lila exhaled sharply, torn between anger and a strange sense of relief. Maybe she had been too harsh. Maybe she had assumed the worst. But the feeling of being scrutinized still lingered, a tension she couldn't quite shake. That evening she walked alone toward the small pond near the edge of the property. The sky was painted with shades of orange and purple, the air cool against her skin. She sat on a large rock, throwing small stones into the water, listening to the soft splash. She thought about the first day, the awkward encounter, and the strange mix of fear and curiosity she felt towards Jake. Jake approached slowly, careful not to startle her. "Beautiful, isn't it?" he asked, nodding toward the sky. Lila looked up, surprised to hear him, and nodded. "Yes, it's peaceful." He sat down a few feet away, leaving enough space for her to feel comfortable. For a while they sat in silence, listening to the soft sounds of nature. Then he spoke, his voice gentle. "I know I made you uncomfortable the first day. I didn't mean to. I just pay attention. It's how I work." Lila studied him, trying to read his expression. There was honesty there, a quiet sincerity she hadn't expected. Slowly the knot of tension in her chest began to loosen. "I maybe overreacted," she admitted. "It's just, this is all new to me." "I'm not used to this kind of life." Jake nodded, understanding in his eyes.
"I get it. You'll learn."
"And don't worry, I'll do my best to make sure you feel safe, not uncomfortable." For the first time since arriving, Lila felt a flicker of trust. She realized that perhaps Jake wasn't the problem. Her assumptions had been. The next morning she woke up determined to try again, to push herself, and to see the ranch and its people clearly, without letting fear or embarrassment cloud her judgment. The summer stretched ahead, promising challenges, lessons, and unexpected discoveries. Lila knew the days would be long, the work hard, and the heat unforgiving. But she also knew there was something here worth learning, not just about ranch life, but about herself, about trust, and about the surprising people she was just beginning to understand. And as she walked toward the barn, Jake's presence nearby no longer felt threatening, but quietly supportive. A silent promise that while mistakes and misunderstandings might happen, they could also be worked through, one day at a time. The tension remained, yes, but now it was mixed with curiosity, a hint of admiration, and the faintest spark of something unspoken that neither of them could yet define. It was the start of a summer that would test limits, build confidence, and change both of them in ways they hadn't imagined. The next morning, Lila woke to the soft sound of birds singing outside her window. The sun was just beginning to rise, casting a golden glow over the fields. She felt a mixture of excitement and anxiety. Today she thought she would really try to immerse herself in ranch life. She wanted to prove that she belonged here, not just to her uncle or Jake, but to herself. After breakfast, she followed her uncle out to the barn, her boots crunching on the gravel path. The air was crisp and the smell of hay and earth filled her senses. Jake was already there, adjusting a halter on a horse that neighed softly. He looked up as she approached and gave a small nod. "Morning, Lila," he said. There was no teasing in his tone, no hint of judgment, just calm, steady acknowledgement. "Morning," she replied, trying to keep her voice steady. She reminded herself not to let her nerves show. Her uncle handed her a bucket of feed. "Today, you're going to help with the horses. You'll start with brushing them and checking their hooves." Lila swallowed hard. Horses were magnificent creatures, but intimidating. She had read about them, seen them in movies, but handling one was a different matter entirely. Jake stepped closer, offering guidance. "Make sure the horse knows you're there before you touch it. Speak softly, and let it see your hands. His instructions were calm, patient, and precise. Lila followed them carefully, her fingers trembling slightly as she reached out to stroke the horse's neck. The animal shifted under her hand, but remained calm. "You're doing fine," Jake said, watching her closely. His gaze was still noticeable, but it no longer felt uncomfortable. Lila realized he wasn't staring for any wrong reason. He was observing, assessing, making sure she was safe. By midday, Lila's arms were sore, her back ached, and her clothes were streaked with dust. She was exhausted, but there was also a sense of accomplishment she hadn't expected. She had brushed 3 horses, checked their hooves, and even led one to the water trough without incident. Jake occasionally gave pointers, his presence steady and reassuring. During lunch, she sat under a large oak tree, wiping sweat from her brow. Jake joined her, carrying a small lunch of bread and cheese. "You're getting better," he said, handing her a bottle of water. "The horses like you. They can tell when someone is calm and confident." Lila smiled, feeling a warmth that wasn't just from the sun. "Thanks. I think I'm starting to understand them a little." She paused, then added cautiously, "And thanks for not making things awkward yesterday." Jake chuckled softly. "No problem. I just want you to learn and stay safe, that's all." His honesty made her relax a little more. For the first time, she felt they were on the same side. The afternoon brought a new challenge. One of the horses, a spirited mare named Bella, became agitated during feeding. She pawed the ground and tossed her head, ears pinned back. Lila froze, unsure how to handle it. Jake noticed immediately and moved closer. "Stay calm," he instructed, his voice firm but gentle. "Step to her side, not in front. Speak softly." Lila did as he said, her hands shaking. Bella's muscles tensed, but she didn't bolt. Jake stayed beside Lila, ready to intervene if necessary. Slowly, Bella calmed, and Lila exhaled with relief. "You did it," Jake said, smiling. "She trusted you." Lila's heart swelled with pride. She realized that part of ranch life wasn't just physical strength. It was patience, observation, and understanding. Jake's earlier staring was beginning to make sense. He watched not out of judgment, but to guide, to protect, to ensure she succeeded. As the days went on, Lila grew more comfortable with the routines. She learned to anticipate the horse's moods, to move with purpose, and to communicate without words. Jake continued to watch, offering advice when needed, correcting mistakes gently. Their relationship shifted from tension to cautious partnership. One evening, while carrying hay to the stables, Lila tripped on a loose plank. The bundle of hay fell, spilling across the ground. She cursed under her breath, frustrated with herself. Jake appeared instantly, helping her pick up the hay. "You okay?" he asked.
Just clumsy, I guess, she admitted, cheeks burning. Jake smiled, a little teasing but warm.
"Clumsy is part of learning. Don't be too hard on yourself." For a moment, Lila felt a spark of connection she hadn't felt before. It wasn't romantic, not yet. It was something deeper, a mutual respect and understanding that grew with each shared task and challenge. A few days later, an unexpected incident tested that trust. One of the horses, startled by a passing truck, bolted toward the fence. Lila tried to hold on to the reins, but the horse was too strong. She felt panic rise in her chest. Jake was already running, moving with speed and precision, and managed to grab the reins just in time. Lila's heart was pounding as she stepped back, realizing how close she had been to danger. "Thank you," she said, her voice shaking. Jake gave a small nod, his eyes serious. "That's why I watch." "It's not about you, it's about keeping you safe." Lila's perspective began to shift. She realized she had misjudged him. The watching, the attention, the quiet presence. Jake wasn't intrusive. He was protective, patient, and skilled. She felt a mix of gratitude and respect she hadn't expected. That evening, as they finished cleaning the stables, Jake offered advice on handling the horses during sunset. The light was soft, casting long shadows across the fields. Lila followed his instructions carefully, noticing how calm and deliberate he was. She realized that ranch life required trust, both in the animals and in the people around you. Their conversations began to deepen. Over coffee in the kitchen, Jake spoke about his childhood on the ranch, the lessons he had learned from his father, and the importance of patience and observation. Lila shared her experiences in the city, the pressures she faced, and her desire to prove herself. They discovered a shared understanding. Both had challenges to overcome. Both were learning. Both were seeking respect in their own ways. One afternoon, while repairing a fence, Lila accidentally hammered her thumb. She yelped in pain, and Jake rushed to her side, offering his handkerchief and a reassuring smile. "It's okay. Accidents happen," he said. She winced, but accepted his help, realizing how naturally he cared for others without overstepping. By the end of the week, Lila noticed a change in herself. She moved with more confidence, spoke with more assurance, and approached tasks with determination. Jake continued to observe, guiding when necessary, but now his presence felt supportive rather than intimidating. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Lila walked to the pond again. Jake followed, as he often did, giving her space but remaining nearby. They sat on the rocks in comfortable silence, watching the water ripple in the evening breeze. "I never realized ranch life could be so challenging," Lila admitted quietly. Jake nodded. "It's hard work, but it teaches you things you can't learn anywhere else. Patience, trust, observation, and respect." Lila smiled faintly, understanding more now than she had at the start. "I think I'm beginning to see that, and I'm starting to understand you too." Jake's lips curved into a small smile. "Good. That makes two of us." For the first time, Lila felt a sense of belonging. She realized that while the ranch was new and intimidating, it was also a place of growth, learning, and unexpected connections. The tension she had felt at first wasn't gone, but it had transformed into something different, a cautious trust, a budding respect, and the start of a partnership built on honesty and understanding. The summer was still long, the work still hard, and the challenges ahead many. But Lila no longer felt alone or overwhelmed. She had allies, guidance, and a growing sense of confidence. And as she watched the sky darken, she knew that the days ahead would continue to teach her, challenge her, and help her grow. Not just as someone new to ranch life, but as someone learning to trust, observe, and understand the people around her. The following week, the ranch was alive with activity. The air buzzed with the sound of horses neighing, cows whirring, and the distant hum of tractors. Lila had grown more confident in her tasks, moving with a steady rhythm she hadn't possessed when she first arrived. Her arms were strong from lifting bales of hay, her hands steady from handling the horses, and her mind alert to the movements of the animals around her. Yet, despite her growing skill, there was one tension that still lingered: Jake. He had become a constant presence, watching, guiding, offering advice when necessary. Lila appreciated his help, but at times the memory of that first day, the embarrassment, the misunderstanding, still prickled at her. She wanted to trust him completely, but a part of her held back. It was late afternoon when the incident happened. That would force them to confront their feelings and misunderstandings head-on. Lila had been leading Bella to the far field for grazing. The mare was calm, moving in a steady rhythm, when suddenly a stray dog appeared, barking and running alongside them. Bella spooked, her muscles tensing, and before Lila could react, she bolted, dragging Lila along. Panic surged in Lila's chest. She tried to hold on to the reins, but Bella was too strong. The wind whipped her hair across her face, and the world became a blur of motion, dust, and fear. Then a familiar voice cut through the chaos. "Ella! Hold on!" Jake's presence was immediate. He sprinted toward her, his hand steady and sure, catching Bella's reins with ease. The mare slowed under his guidance, her panic fading. Lila stumbled but remained upright, her legs trembling as she tried to catch her breath. "You okay, Jake?" asked his voice calm but firm. His eyes scanned her, not with judgment, but with concern. I think so, Leela managed to say, her voice shaking. She looked at him, her frustration and fear mingling with relief.
Thank you. That was scary.
Jake nodded. It's okay. That's why I watch. I make sure nothing happens to you. For the first time, Lila truly understood. All the time she had felt his eyes on her, all the moments she had assumed he was staring were not about her. They were about ensuring she was safe. Her chest tightened as she realized how unfair her assumptions had been. Later that evening, after the horses were settled and the barn cleaned, Leela stayed behind to organize the tack room. Jake was nearby, working quietly, but his presence was noticeable. Lila paused, unsure whether to speak, then decided honesty was better than letting the tension linger. Jake, she began, her voice careful. I want to apologize. I think I misjudged you before. I thought, I don't know, that you were staring for the wrong reasons. But after today, I see that you were only trying to help, to keep me safe. Jake looked at her, his expression unreadable at first. Then, slowly, he gave a small smile. I didn't want to make you uncomfortable.
I just noticed things.
It's how I do my job. But I understand why you felt the way you did. Lila exhaled, feeling a weight lift from her shoulders. I guess I've never really trusted anyone like this before, she admitted. I'm used to figuring things out on my own. It's hard to let someone else in, even if they're trying to help. Jake nodded.
I get that. Trust isn't easy.
But you've shown you're capable and strong. I respect that. And I want you to feel safe, not observed. There was a pause, a quiet moment filled only with the sounds of the ranch, the creak of the barn doors, the distant call of a cow, the soft breeze moving through the hay. In that moment, Lila felt a shift. The fear and frustration that had colored her interactions with Jake were replaced by understanding, and even something warmer, a sense of connection she hadn't anticipated. Over the next few days, Leela and Jake continued to work together. But the dynamic had changed. She noticed the way he anticipated problems, how he guided without overstepping, how his calm presence made her feel capable rather than watched. Their conversations deepened as well. One afternoon, while repairing a fence together, Lila asked, Jake, do you ever feel like people assume things about you without knowing you?
All the time, he admitted. People see the cowboy, the quiet one, and they make assumptions.
But the truth is, there's always more than meets the eye. You have to look closer, pay attention, and sometimes wait until you understand. Lila nodded thoughtfully. I guess I learned that the hard way. He smiled, a little teasing but warm. We both learned something then. The day ended with them standing back surveying the fence they had repaired. Lila felt a sense of accomplishment, but more than that, she felt a sense of camaraderie, a bond built not on misunderstanding, but on mutual respect. The following week brought another challenge that tested their trust and teamwork. A storm was coming, the sky dark with heavy clouds, and the wind began to pick up. Lila was tasked with securing the barn doors and making sure the animals were safe. She moved quickly but carefully, her mind racing with instructions she had learned over the past weeks. Jake was there, moving alongside her. Watch the roof supports, he instructed. The wind can shift them if we're not careful. Together they worked efficiently, communicating with gestures and brief words. The storm grew louder, rain beginning to hit the tin roof with a steady rhythm. Lila realized how much she had learned. She could handle the tasks, anticipate problems, and work effectively under pressure. During a brief lull, she looked at Jake, drenched from the rain but calm, and felt a wave of gratitude. I couldn't have managed this alone, she admitted. Jake shook his head, his eyes soft. You could have. You're stronger than you realize. I'm just here to help when it's needed.
The storm passed, leaving the ranch fresh and green.
Lila felt renewed, not just physically but mentally. She had faced fear, exhaustion, and challenges, and had come through stronger. And through it all, Jake's presence had been steady, respectful, and supportive. One evening after the animals were settled, Lila decided it was time to fully confront the lingering tension between them. She found Jake near the pond, skipping stones across the water. She approached cautiously. "Jake," she began, "I need to say something." He looked up, his expression open. "Go ahead."
I've been unfair to you," she admitted.
"I assumed things about your intentions, and I let that affect how I treated you. I want you to know that I see now you've only ever been respectful and helpful. I'm sorry for the accusations, the sharp words, everything.
Thank you for saying that. I know it wasn't easy.
And I understand why you felt that way, but I appreciate your honesty." They stood in silence for a moment, watching the water reflect the setting sun. The tension that had once defined their interactions was gone, replaced by something steadier, understanding, respect, and the beginning of a true partnership. Over the next few days, their teamwork flourished. Tasks that once felt daunting became manageable. Leela learned to anticipate Jake's guidance, and Jake adjusted to her growing confidence. They laughed together, shared quiet moments, and slowly the boundaries between them became clearer and healthier. One afternoon, Lila reflected on the journey so far. She had arrived at the ranch timid, uncertain, and wary. She had misjudged Jake, assumed the worst, and felt out of place. But through challenge, communication, and shared experience, she had grown. She understood now that trust was earned, respect was mutual, and assumptions could be dangerous. Jake, meanwhile, had gained a new understanding as well. He realized that not everyone understood his ways immediately, and that patience and guidance were sometimes more important than efficiency. He respected Lila's courage, her willingness to learn, and her honesty. Their relationship had shifted from tension and misunderstanding to partnership and mutual respect. By the end of Part 3, both Lila and Jake had grown in unexpected ways. The confrontation had been difficult, emotional, and necessary. It had cleared the air, built trust, and allowed them to move forward without fear or frustration. They were no longer just a newcomer and a cowboy. They were partners, capable of understanding, respecting, and supporting each other in the challenging world of ranch life. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow over the fields, Lila realized that summer had already begun to change her in ways she hadn't anticipated. She was stronger, more confident, and more aware of the people and world around her. And she knew that whatever challenges remained, she and Jake could face them together, honestly, respectfully, and with a newfound understanding that had taken weeks of work, conversation, and shared experience to build. The days passed quickly as summer moved on, bringing long hours of work under the sun, cool evenings and quiet nights filled with the sounds of the ranch. Lila had grown more confident than she had ever imagined she could be. She could handle the horses, tend to the animals, and manage the chores without constant guidance. Yet she still found herself noticing Jake's presence in small, subtle ways. The way he quietly observed the animals, the soft encouragement in his words, the calm steadiness that made even the hardest tasks easier to handle. The morning air was crisp as Lila carried a bucket of feed to the stables. She paused for a moment, glancing at the fields stretching endlessly before her. The golden sunlight lit up the tall grass, and the ranch seemed peaceful, almost magical. She realized that she no longer felt intimidated by the wide open spaces, the animals, or even the hard work. She had changed, grown stronger, and learned to trust herself and those around her. Jake appeared at the edge of the barn, carrying a bale of hay. He nodded at her. "Morning," he said simply. Lila smiled in return, a warmth in her chest. There was no tension, no awkwardness, just familiarity and understanding. "Morning," she replied. "Ready to get started?" He chuckled lightly. "Always." Together, they worked through the morning chores. Lila led a horse to the pasture, Jake guiding alongside her when needed. They moved in rhythm, their actions almost seamless. The trust between them was evident, built through weeks of shared work, challenges, and honest conversation. During lunch, they sat under the oak tree by the pond. The sun was high, the breeze gentle, and the animals resting nearby. Lila brought out a sandwich, and Jake leaned back, watching her with a quiet smile. You've come a long way, he said. I can see the difference from when you first arrived. I feel it too. I can't believe how much I've learned. And I think I've finally figured out that you weren't staring at me like I thought. Jake raised an eyebrow, amusement in his eyes. Oh? And what did you figure out? That you were just watching to make sure I was safe, she said. Not for any other reason. I misjudged you, and I'm sorry for that. Jake's smile softened, and he nodded. Thank you. That means a lot, and I understand why you felt that way. It's natural to be cautious when someone new enters your world. Lila looked out at the fields, feeling a sense of peace. I guess we both learned something this summer, she said quietly. Yes, Jake agreed. Trust, patience, understanding, and maybe a little humility too. They laughed together, the sound carrying across the ranch. It was a lightness they hadn't shared before, a feeling of genuine connection that went beyond work and chores. That afternoon, a new challenge arrived. A neighbor's cow had wandered onto the ranch, and it was causing a bit of chaos among the other animals. Lila and Jake sprang into action, working together to guide the cow back to the fence. Lila remembered all the lessons she had learned, the calmness, the observation, the gentle guidance. She spoke softly to the cow, moving with confidence. Jake moved alongside her, ready to intervene, but allowing her space to lead. By the time the cow was safely returned, Lila was sweating but smiling. We did it, she said, her chest rising with pride. Jake nodded, a faint smile on his lips. You did it. I just helped make sure it went smoothly. Lila felt a warmth in her chest, realizing that this was more than just about ranch work. It was about partnership, about learning to rely on each other while still respecting each other's abilities and space. That evening, they took a break by the pond, watching the sun dip below the horizon. The sky was painted with streaks of orange, pink, and purple, and the air was calm. Lila felt a deep sense of contentment, something she hadn't felt in a long time. I've never felt so capable, she admitted quietly. I used to doubt myself all the time, but now I feel like I can do things I never imagined. Jake looked at her, his expression soft. You've always had it in you. You just needed the right place to grow and someone to trust along the way. Lila smiled, feeling a connection stronger than ever. I think this summer has changed me, she said. And I think it's changed how I see people, too. I've learned not to assume the worst, to give people a chance, to see their intentions clearly. Jake nodded.
That's an important lesson, and I've learned something too.
Patience, understanding, and trust, they matter more than anything else. Watching you learn and grow has been inspiring. For a while, they sat in silence, watching the water reflect the colors of the sunset. There was no tension, no misunderstanding, only respect, trust, and a deep, quiet connection. It was the kind of bond that could withstand challenges, misunderstandings, and hard work. The following days were filled with small victories. Lila successfully handled the horses alone, managed the chores without help, and even repaired a section of the fence independently. Each achievement built her confidence, and each day she noticed Jake's steady presence, supportive but never overbearing. Their teamwork was seamless, a combination of skill, understanding, and mutual respect. One afternoon, as they finished stacking hay bales, Lila paused, looking at Jake. You know, I think I've learned the most important lesson this summer, she said. And what's that? He asked, curious. That trust isn't given, it's earned, she replied. And respect isn't just about saying it, it's about showing it through actions. You've taught me that without even trying, Jake. He looked at her, a faint smile tugging at his lips. And you've taught me that assumptions can cloud judgment, and patience can make all the difference. They laughed together, a light, easy sound that carried across the fields. The sun was low, casting long shadows, and the ranch seemed peaceful, almost perfect. As the summer drew to a close, Lila reflected on her journey. She had arrived timid, uncertain, and wary. She had misjudged Jake, struggled with the ranch work, and doubted herself. But through challenges, honest conversation, and shared experiences, she had grown. She was stronger, more confident, and more aware of the people and world around her. Jake had grown too. He had learned to be patient, to guide without overstepping, and to respect boundaries while still offering support. The tension that had defined their early interactions had transformed into mutual understanding, respect, and partnership. On the last evening before her departure, Lila and Jake stood by the barn, watching the sun set over the fields. The colors of the sky reflected in the pond, and the animals moved quietly, resting after a long day. Lila felt a mix of sadness and gratitude. She had learned so much, grown in ways she hadn't anticipated, and formed a connection with someone she now deeply respected.
Thank you, Jake, she said softly, for everything.
For your patience, your guidance, your understanding, for teaching me so much this summer. Jake smiled, his expression calm and warm. You did all the work. I just helped when it was needed. I'm proud of how far you've come. Lila laughed softly. I'll miss this place, she admitted, but I'll carry what I've learned with me always. And I'll remember how much you've grown, Jake replied. You've earned it all, and I hope you remember that you can handle anything, no matter where you go. They shared a quiet moment, standing side by side, the golden light of the sunset surrounding them. There was no awkwardness, no tension, only respect, trust, and a bond forged through shared experience and growth. As Lila packed her things the next morning, she felt ready to face the world outside the ranch. She had discovered strength she didn't know she had, learned lessons about trust and respect, and gained a deep understanding of the value of patience, observation, and support. Jake helped load the last of her belongings into the truck, and for a moment they stood silently. You'll do great, Jake said, finally breaking the silence. I have no doubt about that. Thank you, Jake, for everything. The truck pulled away, and Lila looked back at the ranch, the golden fields, and the barn that had become a place of growth, challenge, and understanding. She waved, and Jake waved back, their eyes meeting with a quiet acknowledgement of the journey they had shared. As the truck drove down the long dirt road, Lila reflected on the summer that had changed her life. She had arrived unsure, timid, and wary of others. She was leaving strong, confident, and full of respect for herself, for Jake, and for the lessons the ranch had taught her. The experience had been more than she had ever expected. It had taught her about trust, about judgment, about patience, and about the quiet strength that comes from facing challenges and learning from them. And most importantly, it had shown her that respect and understanding, when given and earned, could turn tension and misunderstanding into something lasting and meaningful.
The ranch faded in the distance, but Lila knew its lessons would remain with her forever.
And somewhere in the quiet spaces of her heart, she knew that Jake's steady presence, his patience, and his guidance had shaped not just her summer, but the person she was becoming. But